I always wanted to write. From when I was very young, the pleasure of reading a story or having a story read to me and the pleasure of telling a story was exactly the same. It was identical. It was all the same feeling. I always still call that feeling story. I just had this, I had the full complement of human emotions, but I also got this other one, story, where I wanted to tell stories and read stories and be in stories. And so I started writing when I was very young. And gradually, as I got older, I became aware that you have to you can't just keep writing for fun. At some point you have to decide whether you're going to professionalize, whether you're going to try and be published. And of course, in the word publication is the definition. You're seeking a public to look at your work. And it's true that when you're writing a story, it's not that it's meaningless without an audience, but it's just so much more fun with an audience. And so then I had to sort of look at my creative habits and work out how they sort of integrated with a more professional setting. I think there's even a sense that if we talk about art and business in the same sentence, that there's something very wrong happening here, that they have completely different aims. But they don't, not really, because finding an audience is part of telling your story. Otherwise, you're just telling it to yourself in the shower. Someone once said a story without an audience is like a kiss without a partner. It's actually only half the job. I don't have any problems with that at all. And there are many models of business, they're not all evil, grab your hand stuff. And publishing as a business is a really nice business. It's run nicely, and it's run by people who are crazy about books like me. So lots of like-minded people, and it all seems to work out. Yeah, so I wrote my first book when I was an undergraduate here at University of Queensland. I was doing a double major in English literature. And I was sitting in the back of my Victorian literature exam at the end of semester and thinking, what am I going to do on my holidays? And I said, oh, well, maybe I'll finally write that novel that I've been thinking about all along. I must tell you that before this, I'd written 10 novels that were bad. But I just had a sense that this time I was going to write a good one. And so I did. I started writing it on the long break between the end of one year and the beginning of the next, and managed to get a book contract by April of the next year. And then my first novel was actually published while I was a third-year undergraduate student. And something I'm very interested in. I'm very interested in artists' material relationship with time, because you do need time. And not just time to tippity-tap out the words, time to think through the ideas and let them sort of develop, and of course time for research and reading and all of that other stuff. And I found that what helps me the most in terms of managing my time is to have a really well-developed set of good habits around my work, because now when I was an undergraduate and I wrote my first book, that was nothing. I mean, I was doing 4 courses and it was nothing. Now I have like a full-time job at the University of Queensland, and I have 2 children, and I have an aging mother, and I have a lot on. I really am quite busy. So it's all about the work habits, so that when you do have the time, and you do set aside the time, you have defined tasks that you do, and you just stick to them. And you don't procrastinate on the internet. Often when we talk about writing, especially writing novels, which is the long haul, there's these 2 different sort of approaches, and one's called the pantser, or fly by the seat of your pants, make it up as you go along, and one's called the plotter. That's the person who sits there and figures out in advance what they're going to do and then sort of writes in sequence. And rather than seeing those as 2 different categories, I like to see them as 2 ends of a spectrum. And the truth is that a lot of the time I do plot, I do decide what I want to do in advance, but when I'm actually writing, I find that I'm pantsing some of it. You've got to be flexible enough to change if something's not working. And if you have a watertight plan that you're so committed to that changing something makes you feel anxious, and that's not working, you need to be able to say, oh, that's not working, I need to maybe do this little diversion and see how it works. But I tell you something I will never do is I will never start a book without at least a sense of its skeleton, a sense of its key turning points, a sense of where it's going to go in general. And that's not even about plotting or narrative, that's just about project management. That's just so that I can finish the damn thing and get it in on its deadline. So it's still absolutely possible for me to fail after 27 books. And in fact, last year I wrote a bad book and I refused to have it published because by the time I finished it, I thought to myself, this book is just not working. And I still finished it, you know, I'm a finisher. I sent it off to my agent and I said, I don't think we can publish this. And she said, oh, don't be silly, it'll be fine. And then she read it and called me and she said, I don't think we can publish this. And to be able to let go of that, to be able to say, no, I'm not going to force this through multiple editorial stages and publish it. To be able to say, no, I can't deliver that book that I promised you, was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me. It freed me up in a way to understand to understand how I'd managed to fail, taught me how not to the next time. And so it was an incredible experience. And it did mean that I lost some money. But now I'm writing a new one, the one to replace that one. And I've been very nervous about it, thinking, oh, what if this one doesn't work too? But I'm putting all of my things in place. I know what didn't work last time. And just the other day I hit the 25,000 word mark and I went, no, that's it. It's working. I know it's gonna come good. So that's obviously a great feeling, but it took that failure to teach me that. I never take for granted that I'll manage. There's always a feeling at the start of every book, every project of, oh, is this gonna come off? Is this gonna work? And one of the key skills that I've learned over the years is that you sometimes just have to brazen it out. Everybody doubts themselves, and especially creative people. Everybody doubts themselves. The difference between people who doubt themselves and don't produce a book and people who doubt themselves and do is that the people who do, they just keep working through the doubt. And it is such a valuable skill.